Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Virginia City Council Chambers. This is a regularly scheduled Committee of the Whole meeting working session. Call this meeting to order. Today's date is Tuesday, January 16th, 2024. The time is 9 a.m. We're going to move the schedule around a little bit with respect to the appearances. We're going to get some of these items out of, that we can hopefully resolve fairly quickly. There's going to be a significant presentation by Dana Hilton from the HRA regarding the budget and rental rates for the Washington Manor. So thank you for your patience as we arrange a schedule a little bit differently today. Welcome to everybody that's in the audience today and those who are listening at home. We have a full council present today, and our staff is also present, and our finance director should be here shortly. And we'll turn this portion of our meeting over to our city administrator, Britt Seabenis. Britt.
Morning, everybody. Thank you, Mayor. First item on the agenda is Matt Reed requests approval for the professional services agreement for Silver Lake Trail Phase 3.
Matt Reed from SCH, our engineer of record. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning. So in front of you this morning is, as you know, we are out for bids right now on Silver Lake Trail Phase 3, or the modified scope, I should say, of Silver Lake Trail Phase 3, which will be a nice asset if we can get the bids in and get them reasonable and get them done. So being a little proactive, well, two parts, I guess, in that. There was some changes to the scope of the project as it went along, and so there is a portion of this request for additional fees, and I can touch on those more if you'd like. And then the second part is being proactive in getting our construction services contract lined up and ready to go so that we can hit the ground running when the time comes. So we have not accepted bids yet, of course. Those will come end of January, and we'll be back before you with the bids to review. But I can answer any questions that you may have with this if you'd like.
Well, just to clarify, thank you, Mike. This is an LCCMR funded project, yes, which is a grant, and included in this is the fees associated with that you're requesting today as part of this LCCMR grant. So thank you. Looking for questions, comments from the council with respect to Matt Reed's request for the approval of professional service agreement on Silver Lake Trail Phase 3 of the funded grant from LCCMR.
I will move the approval of the professional services agreement for the trail project.
Thank you. Councilor Freely moves to approve. Is there support?
Support.
By Councilor Johnson. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Anything else from Matt today? Got off a little bit better. Have a good day. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. We're going to jump to item number 3, which is a request to purchase city-owned property along Highway 53 by the Quad Cities ATV Club, and that's parcel 090-0180-00140.
Okay, thank you. And in the audience today, we have Mr. Dave Dinko and Mr. Dennis Hendricks from the ATV Club. But we did have a preliminary meeting with respect to this prior to the committee of the whole with Britt Seabenis, myself, and others that were at this meeting. And so we asked to come to the committee of the whole for us to discuss the purchase of this parcel for the express purpose of putting in some type of a trailhead. And welcome, Mr. Dinko, Dave Dinko from the ATV Club.
Morning,
Dave,
Mayor.
morning.
So I guess we're in front of you. I guess we're in front of you looking for a piece of property in the city of Virginia. As the mayor said, it would be a trailhead, which wouldn't only be for ATVs, it would be for snowmobiles, ATVs, whoever wants to park there, basically. It would be just a convenience that we would fund, we would pay for. We're not looking for this property for anything, so we're willing to pay fair market value or whatever the city decides to do with it. Other things that this piece of property could be used for, we would provide privies there. We could actually use a future building for our ATV club, maintenance building, clubhouse, etc. Another portion of that could be an ATV training facility, which is really needed in our area. People are always calling, is there anywhere to train our kids? ATV training, things like that. So that being said, that's basically what we're looking for to get our feet on the ground and get running with this project.
And could you just give us a little update, or Britt, where the specific location is, to give us all an idea of, councilors, where this is actually located.
In your packet, it's on page 18. It's the pinkish map. That's the triangular piece. It looks like a triangle adjacent to Highway 53 across from Joy Global or Komatsu.
Okay, very good, thank you. This is a good source use of the property. It's not a buildable lot for the city to use for the most part, and so this is the piece of parcel that's being suggested. Being suggested, Councilor Motley.
And actually, I get super excited when I hear this. Thank you, Dave. Has the city ever had any plans for this piece of property over the past years or in the future, Britt? Or
I was not here when we conveyed the property to Joy Global, but I think the property was purchased as tax forfeit for that reason, for Joy Global, in case they needed it for their construction, but it is not encumbered at this moment.
okay, and then Dave, would it be easier for you guys if you purchased the land, or would ever be an option if we leased it, if the council didn't want to sell it?
Well, I guess we'd have to cross that bridge when we get there. I believe the city's going to have to be a fiscal agent regardless. So this is a partnership. So we can apply for our grants and our money through the IRRB and wherever we get our funding from. So
Is it easier for you as a landowner in order to get the grants and things like that, or is it more difficult if you're a leasee?
well, I think no matter what, the city's got to be on it, whether we're owner or not,
Okay.
for our fiscal agent to get grant money. So
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Councilor Motley. Councilor Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for coming in today with this. One of my questions was if it was purple or pink, so I appreciate that. Have you had any discussions with MnDOT about the access? I see there's a road to the north of the property, but has that happened at all yet?
yes, there's legal turning lanes coming in this property. It's right on the trailhead. And one of the things on this parcel is the main power lines run over it. So it's kind of an unbuildable portion, but we can use it as parking. We've talked to Lake Country Power and Minnesota Power, which both own power lines under there. We're able to put parking areas as long as we don't build any permanent structures under them, and they have access to their power lines.
And then one last question, and that was my next question, so I appreciate that clarification. Where does your trail run as depicted in this, in the?
On the north side of that property, that road that runs into Mintac.
Okay.
That's the main snowmobile ATV trailhead going to and from Virginia.
Okay, perfect. I appreciate that, and I think that there's some great opportunities here for your organization as well as the city. I will move up to direct staff to begin working with the club to figure out how we can make this happen for them.
A motion by Councilor Johnson. Is there support?
Support for discussion. Sorry.
Support by Councilor Freely. Prefer the discussion. For the discussion, Councilor Freely.
Primarily, it would be for access to the trail with parking available for trucks and trailers and so on.
Yes.
Are you thinking class 5? Are you looking at asphalting, or would we be restricted?
Well, future asphalt, yes,
Okay.
with privies. And one thing we haven't brought up, but we've talked to Britt about it, is behind there's tax forfeit county land, which we would request that maybe the city could help us with. And that being said, that's 8.36 acres. And, it's the future, but that would make a great spot for an RV campground or something like that we could build and fund. And, if you had 20 RV sites there, it would be easy access to the city. People are looking for places to go, and there's nothing like this north of Duluth. I know that for a fact, so.
And the mapping systems, the available for retail opportunities, for informational purposes, for a training facility to train, all those come into play. And touring some of these other areas with ATVs and all across Minnesota, I've had an opportunity to go on some of these trails and visit some of these trailheads that are down in the metro area, and it helps the economics of not just the tourism, but we have a restaurant up at the golf course that's that's going to be available, and so that just adds to the opportunities for us to glean some benefit from it as well. So I'm fully supportive of moving forward with this and with the motion to direct staff to work with you, come to an agreement, and come back to us with some specific information. So we probably have some more questions. Right now, there's going to be a myriad of questions, but by directing staff to work this out and come back with some agreement moving forward for us to consider, I think that's moving forward. So I'm supportive of it as well. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much for coming in. I think it's a great opportunity. I just have two questions. The first one is, are there any wetlands and would any delineation need to happen?
No matter what, we would have to do the delineation before we proceed, but I don't believe there's any wetlands in that parcel.
Okay, so what you're looking to do wouldn't cost the city any dollars to do any delineation. That would be on the ATV clubs.
This project is 100% on the ATV club.
Okay.
We are not asking the city for anything as far as monies or anything on this project.
Thank you. And then the second and last question I had, are there any outdoor advertising signs on that? I'm trying to figure out where that signage is, and I know it was I don't know if I'm thinking of the right location, but it was the Heart of Virginia owned one of those, and I think Mesabi Sign services that, but I don't know if that's, it would be on the southern portion of that. I don't know if that's where they are or not. But just a quick, if there are those, there might have to be some easements that you'd have to take a look at granting, whether it's Lamar or Mesabi Sign. And I think some of those were grandfathered in with, I don't know if it was mining property or railroad property, I can't remember, but that was just the only other thing that came to my mind, that if there are those sign companies, that we'd have to work something out as well.
I've walked the property and drove the property, and there are no signs on it.
Okay, so that would just be something maybe that we'd have to have staff look into as well.
They're a little bit to the south of that on
Okay.
the next parcel.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
I did as well. There's signs north and south of that, so thank you. Okay, it has been moved and supported to direct staff to move forward. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Motley.
2 seconds. Just thanking you both again for pushing this forward and all the work you have done behind the scenes. To everybody that's an ATV, snowmobiler, we are happy for the work you've put in. Thanks, Mayor.
We are. Thank you. It has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Work with Britt and staff, and they'll come up with some kind of a plan moving forward and bring it back to the council for a discussion and hopefully approval.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dinko. Thank you, Mr. Hendricks.
We will move to item number 4, which is a request from Judy Simperman for reimbursement for sewer placement.
Would you please come forward? Thank you very much. And would you turn the mic on to the green? And then please state your name for the record, and welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting.
Okay, good morning. My name is Judy Simperman. I'm here on behalf of my son Sean, who had purchased a lot up in Fairview. I think those lots that he purchased had been sitting vacant for probably around 20 years, and he paid $30,000 for the lot, and he didn't actually officially own the lot until plans were submitted to the city engineering office and approved before he was able to get a building permit to move forward. And so they started with the basement dig and got the house built and so on. It's been inspected all through the process as it went along. Well, then when it came time to hook up the sewer, first of all, there was some trouble finding out exactly where the sewer hookup was. Well, then when they discovered where it was and started digging, they found out that the basement was lower than where you would hook up to the sewer stub. So that obviously doesn't work. It doesn't, things can't go uphill. So they had to end up digging into the street in order to get low enough to hook up to the sewer. Normally, I don't know did you give the pictures that I sent to you? So everybody has the pictures? Okay, so normally, if you look at, all of this stuff here, you'd be hooking the sewer up normally before you run into this stuff. These are some big high voltage pipes. I don't know if they probably come from that big electrical tower that's a couple lots over. And then you have MediaCom, and I think there's CenturyLink. The yellow is the gas line. I think that's the residential electric that's right near the curb. So this is something we didn't anticipate, obviously. And found out after we came and talked to the planning office upstairs that Bill Cole told me they were aware that there was an issue and 2 people up there had to put in lift stations. Mm-hmm. So my point is, had we known this, we would have changed the plans so that this wouldn't have occurred, or we would have had to go through this whole process of digging into the street. And then also, in addition, it slowed the project down, but the project has been, first of all, we had COVID, then the lack of supply, the supply chain problems and so on. So the whole project's been kind of a nightmare to begin with. But I think had we been informed that there was issues with other people up in the area as to, the sewer hookup, that we would have changed the plans. We submitted the plans for their approval and didn't hear anything about these issues. And if we had, we would have made different plans, either made less of a deep basement or raised it up to begin with, or maybe not dig a basement at all and just have a 2-story house, but we didn't know. And I think if you have a copy of the invoice from then I had talked to quite a few people at the city, and then I ended up talking to Britt, and she said to have our excavator do the work, because otherwise they'd have to put it out on bids, and then that would, again, delay the whole project. She had no idea how long that would take, so she just told our guy to go ahead with it. And the city, Jim was very cooperative in helping locate initially where all the sewer stubs were and everything like that. So we did have good cooperation with Jim through this whole situation, but we'd like to be reimbursed for the invoice of $21,000 for that it cost the excavator to do this. They had to actually get a vacuum truck in there to suck the soil out under all that, piping, infrastructure, gas lines, so on, because it was kind of a hairy situation, with the gas line there, and it was high voltage electric, it was, you really just couldn't just start digging there because of the danger. So it was just quite an ordeal to get, and then they even had a hand dig underneath, and then they had to, I think that red line right by the curb is the residential electric, so he had to, I even watched him while he was cutting up the curb, and I was just like, I wanted to go like this, because, it was just a hairy situation all the way around, having to dig in that area that, normally you wouldn't have to, had we known of the situation beforehand, that, that it was a issue up there in some cases.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple of questions, then we'll move to the rest of the council for that, and maybe staff for some input. So you had a contractor to build the house, correct?
Right.
And that contractor's responsibility would be to do a utilities locate on where all the utilities are.
Yep, we got the
Okay.
utilities locate from the city.
Okay?
Yeah.
And which includes where the water lines are, the sewer, the electrical, everything,
Right, but, yeah.
before you built the house.
Yeah, I mean, the city gave us a
Right.
thing, and yeah,
Okay, so did you know beforehand, you had this information, your contractor had this information? My question is that contractor should have known that this was where those utilities were located to make a recommendation on how this home was going to be built. If the permit was provided and you did the located, the contractor should have known that this was an issue and made adjustments accordingly.
yeah, I don't think that there was any way for him to know that.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the council? Britt, do you have any other information with respect to this? Anything that you could pass on?
And I think, and maybe I don't have this right, Mrs. Zimmerman, but if you can clarify this, I think the reason you had to dig out in the street was you couldn't connect to the one in your yard because it was too low. So you had to go farther out into the street to connect to the higher main.
To get it low enough, right, right. But, we didn't know that at the time, and we weren't informed that, this was a known issue that wasn't presented to us. I mean,
Well, the question that I have, and I don't deny that you have an issue there, and we have to consider what we're going to do. But when you do the utilities locate, the contractor should know where all the utilities were, where the water and sewer is, where the electrical is, where everything is before, when you got the permit. So he had to know where everything was and what needed to be done. And taking a look at the schematics of the architectural design of that, as the builder is building that, should know, in order to connect to the sewer, in order to connect to the water, in order to take electrical, these are the steps that we have to take in which to accomplish that. But by building the house and then digging and not knowing, I'm surprised, just be personally, I'm just surprised that he didn't know that.
well, we're only talking like a foot. And I mean, there's no way to know exactly where it is. There was no way to know exactly where it was. And if Bill Cole had let us know, this all could have been prevented. That's why we submitted the plans, and he could see the plans of what we were going to build. And he knew there was an issue, and he didn't let us know.
So a question that I have for staff, and the other homes that put lift stations in, there was no reimbursement for those, was there? There was none. Okay, those are all my questions I have for you, Ms. Zimmerman. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from the council? Ms. Zimmerman, could you please stay just for a couple of minutes? Maybe I have a couple more questions for you. Thank you very much for your patience.
Yep.
Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for coming and explaining. So I just have a question regarding whose responsibility was it, or should it have been, to begin with? I would assume the process was the lot was purchased, and then the building plans were drawn up and submitted to our planning department. Is that correct? And at that point in time, whose responsibility is it to review the plans and to make sure whatever those lines are that are shown in the pictures are adequate or would have been inadequate for the footprint of the building plans themselves?
That is a great question, and we do have Bill Cole here today. So if possible, could I go see if he could come and talk about what's going on with this? Because I don't know the answer to that. Give me 1 second, I'll go grab him.
Anything more, Councilor Paulson, while we're waiting, or? Any other
I
questions?
guess I was just trying to kind of figure out the back end trail of how we got to where we got to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And if I may have, while we're waiting for some, just have a couple more quick questions for you. So the lot was purchased from the city for how much did you say you paid for the lot?
30,000.
$30,000 for the lot. Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the council? Concerns, comments, while we're waiting for Britt to get us the additional information that's been requested? Okay, thank you. We'll just wait a couple minutes. Thank you very much. Britt? Yes.
Mr. Cole is here. If you'd like to
Mr.
ask him some
Cole?
questions.
Yeah, so we have Bill Cole, who is with our planning department, permitting and code enforcement and issuing of the permits with respect to building officials. So, Bill, would you have any information that you could help disseminate with respect to Ms. Zimmerman's issue? We have Bill Cole, she can answer some questions or give us some clarity here, please. Bill, anything?
I guess I'm not familiar with what Judy is requesting. I didn't read the.
Oh, okay. So there's an invoice, I think, if we could maybe give them a copy of that for some, hookup to the sewer line. Apparently, there was some issue that the home was built on a parcel that we sold in the Fairview addition, and once the house was being constructed, there was discovery that there's a sewer hookup that was an issue, and they had to open up the city street in which to do that. There was like about a foot difference in being able to hook that up, and there was a additional cost incurred by the builder, and they had additional work. She is seeking on behalf of her son, Sean Simperman, a reimbursement for the city for $21,000 for this adjustment to hook up the sewer.
I believe when Fairview Addition was being developed, the sewer and water to each parcel up there was set at a grade that was similar to what an 8-foot basement would be. Most everyone up there has met that I don't think there's anyone up there at this time that has had to put in a grinder pump and an ejector pump in order to send the sewage out of their building. Could be mistaken there, but that would have been my first option for the homeowner instead of opening up the street. Never good when you open up a brand new street, especially with the high voltage power lines that are there, gas lines, everything that's there.
So I have a question for you, Bill, and I think maybe I might probably defer that to Councillor Paulson. So when somebody submits the plans to build a home and apply for the permit to do so, the plans are reviewed by the department that they used to supervise and now are part of that still as well. And so you have this property, the plans are submitted, the permit, the plans are reviewed by your office, and it's determined as to whether or not a permit can be issued based upon the plans. As part of that plans, is it the builder's responsibility to do a relocate of those, to determine where that's it? So as they build this property, or they build a home, or should they have been aware, or the contractor have been aware that this was an issue with respect to the sewer hookup, and then, or how does that work? Is it a responsibility of the builder or not?
Normally, the set of plans that we receive, they don't give us an actual finished floor elevation on the basement. It's, okay, we're going to put in a basement, it's an 8-foot basement. They don't tell us if the basement is going to be at 1410 or 14.8, what elevation they want it to be. That is pretty much left up to them. Other projects that were in the neighborhood, they have checked their sanitary elevation at the time of the excavation for the basement to make sure they can meet that sanitary elevation.
Okay. So whether you can answer this or not, and if you're not comfortable answering or it's not within the construct of the duties and responsibilities of your office. So I'm asking for an opinion here whether you can provide it or not. Would it have been the contractor's responsibility to make sure that that got reviewed or inspected or before they design that portion of it?
It depends on what the contractor is hired to do. As you know, if you hire a contractor just to dig a hole for a basement, that's all they're going to do. If you hire a contractor to, okay, lay this whole thing out for me, make sure it works, that's what they'll do. It's all in what you hire the people to do.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. And this may be just a case of which came first, the chicken or the egg, so that's what I'm trying to determine. So when the property owner submitted the building plans to the planning department here, they were reviewed, but not necessarily according to like what you just stated, it may be based on an 8-foot basement. Is that correct? And then the contractor maybe is what you're saying somebody needed to know. But what I guess what I'm getting at is, so there needed to be, was permission granted then to dig up the street, or was it upon a recommendation that it would be more cost effective if the contractor did it versus the city of Virginia do it? And then is there a financial liability on the city's behalf because the property owner was instructed to do it that way? So I'm trying to back it up and understand where, if the city has financial liability, because that's basically what you're asking for. Is that correct?
I apologize, but would you please come forward so we can all hear?
With the plans that we submitted, it was plain that it was a 9-foot basement. And when I had talked to Bill after the fact, he had told me that a couple other people had to put in lift stations so that they knew that there had been an issue in some cases. So that's my main point, is one simple sentence could have prevented the whole thing.
So if, regardless if we dug up the street or not, or it had to be dug up in order for you.
Well, I had talked to, several people, City and Britt, and she had talked to a few other people, and then we were told just to have our excavator contractor go ahead and do the work, because they didn't know how long of a delay it would be, because they'd have to put it out in bids and so on. So that's what we did.
So then that brings the question, before we go back to Councilor Paulson, by directing the contractor to do the work instead of the city, would the city normally do that in those particular cases?
Yes, because in this situation, the call she made to me was, I need to connect to the city main out in the street, which is normal for people to do, get a utility permit to do something like that. And what her request to me was, will the city connect my sewer to the main? I said, no, the city will not connect your sewer to the main. We'd have to go to contractor to do that. We'd have to get plans done. We can't do that. You can do that as part of your construction, is what I conveyed to Judy. And I told her, you do need a sewer, so if you need to connect, you need to connect. So that's where I had her contractor go ahead and do that. It's a very common. We have utility permits all over the city. You see dig-ups for fiber lines and such all over the city. But
So the contractor didn't work in lieu of the city. They did
Correct.
it because, right, okay.
it was her contractor doing work for her on her behalf.
Very good. Thank you. Councilor Paulson.
Okay, that helps clarify things. The question then that I would have, though, is, again, going back to the building plans, if it was stated 9 feet, and the I don't know, those are electrical, and there were 3 lines in that picture. I don't know exactly what those are.
There's actually more than that. I think we've got these white ones out here are some great big high voltage lines. I don't know if they go to a mine, or I don't know what they are for. Then there's a MediaCom line, and I don't know if that's CenturyLink line, the yellow gas line, and I think that's the residential electric right by the curb there. So that was the bad situation, is normally you're installing this, you're hooking up the sewer before you get to this stuff. But it was shy by just a foot or less. So that's why we had to go through the whole process of the hairy situation of digging around all this stuff that,
And the
like I
city
said,
of
one
Virginia-
simple sentence could
The
have.
city of Virginia put those lines in to begin with, is that correct? And were they below, were they at the depth or the level that they needed to be at in order to have proper construction upon the sale of that lot?
I believe that Bill Cole did indicate that when they developed that property, they developed it for the 8-foot basement, as they normally do, and that's what the lines were for, an 8-foot basement.
Okay, so I guess that begs the conversation, whether 8-foot or 9-foot. Now, if you did an 8-foot, would that have been necessary to dig all that up?
No.
So that probably is where the communication, it sounds like, maybe broke down a little bit.
Right, because the plans we submitted, it was plain that it was a 9-foot basement.
But what you're saying is that it's normal when a builder or a homeowner or a property owner goes to hire a contractor, it's their responsibility to hook up to the city's line. Okay, so I don't know where that leaves us, but I just wanted to get those questions answered, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
No, yeah, thank you, Councilor Paulson. Okay, so on the agenda is Ms. Simperman is here on behalf of her son Sean with respect to a request for reimbursement for a sewer placement at the new construction residential home up in Fairview. And the amount that's listed in your packet, $21,000 and change. Counselor Motley?
So I really know nothing about construction, so when I say this, just take this with a grain of salt, I guess. But so is it hypothetical to think that there would have been a cheaper way to go around hooking this up with the contractor? Could he have gone cheaper? And I have no idea.
What the contractor said to us is that by the time you end up doing everything to install this lift station, it would probably have been in that ballpark anyway. And, you know, when you build in a city, you're expecting the amenities of the city, you know, where you'd have normal hookups and not a lift station right in your front yard, you know. So, and like I said, had we known, we could have either done an 8-foot basement, started the basement higher, not done a basement at all, built a 2-story house, just by knowing that there was an issue.
I understand. Is it the city's responsibility to inform, whoever this falls under, is it the city's responsibility to inform somebody who's building what their requirements are for either an 8 or a 9-foot basement with what the sewer has? Like, is it our responsibility if it's 8 foot deep and she's going to build 9 feet? Is it our responsibility to inform the builder that, I guess?
So,
Or is this under the contractor knowing how, or should they know how deep this is?
let's ask Ms. Simperman first, and then maybe get a, staff. Ms. Simperman, so when the home was built, was the contractor, the general contractor who built your home, responsible for the entire home, or was it, did you subcontract all the work with respect to the sewer hookup there, or was it the one contractor did everything?
Well, it was kind of a combination. He suggested that we use this Jacobson to do the excavating, so we were in contact with him. And then when we did run into this issue, then, and he, you know, he's a very, seasoned contractor, the excavator. He's done this for many, many years and does a lot of stuff. So, I mean, he's not like he's not been around the block. And like I said, my main point is one simple sentence. It prevented the whole thing.
Thank you. Okay. Does anybody else need any other information? Not, we'll go to Councilor Johnson. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Is your primary contractor licensed and bonded?
Yes.
Insured?
Yes.
I think that would be the first place I would start. It sounds to me like there was a lack of communication somewhere. And I believe that you just stated that your contractors has been doing this for many years and is very good at it. I would have think this would have been one of those basic things they would have checked into right away. So listening, the only thing I would wonder is if it doesn't sound like there was negligence, willful negligence on the part of the city at all. It sounds like we did what we do for every building that gets built in town. Excuse me. So I would ask if you've had that conversation with your general contractor and looking into other ways because of what sounds like the nature of it's kind of like buyer beware. It's, as a builder, it's your job to make sure everything's where it belongs and what needs to happen to build a new home. All of our stuff is documented, especially in that new part of town, exactly what the depths of everything is, where that stuff is located.
Actually, that was a very hard issue to come by. It wasn't really very well documented. We had a lot of trouble even figuring out where the sewer stub was to begin with, you know, for a normal hookup.
So did you find the sewer stub before you started the building?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Again, my point is you have a planning office. We followed all the rules. Submitted the plans for their review. We submitted the trust plans. We submitted all the plans, everything that they needed, we submitted. One simple sentence. This is designed up there for an 8-foot basement, not a 9-foot basement. No problem. One sentence. I mean, why do we go to the planning office? I mean, it's like going to the doctor and then something's wrong with me, and then they run some tests and stuff, and then you don't hear back from them, and then you maybe go back to them and say, what's the deal? And they go, oh, you got cancer. And you go, well, maybe you should have, told me that I had cancer. And you go, and the doctor says, well, you probably should have asked, do I have cancer? I mean, it's just, you go to the professionals, you have a planning office. I mean, isn't that part of the thing? You submit your plans, they review them, they let you know if there's any issues. I just.
Yeah, well, with all due respect.
You want people to build in the city, you pay $30,000 for the lot. The lot's been sitting there for 20 years, nobody's bought it. And you buy it in good faith, and one simple sentence from the planning office could have prevented it. I just don't see how there's not some liability on the city's part. Just one sentence. That's all we needed.
Well, we have to make a decision one way or the other, but I don't think there's a liability here, for the lack of a better term, with all due respect to your issue. When a plan is submitted, you put the plan to build whatever you want to build. Planning looks at that and says, yes, this is a legitimate structure. Whether you want a 10-foot basement, a 5-foot basement, or whatever, it's a legitimate structure. You meet the codes of the building material, and the plan is approved and permit issued based upon that. And then your contractor does a locator, whatever the case may be. So if it's a 9-foot basement, maybe it would have been nice to have our planning and zoning say, well, you're building a 9-foot basement, you maybe have to take a look at where that's at. But I don't think it's a liability issue with respect to the city.
Well,
however,
yeah, I mean,
we have
it's
to figure
just
this out.
like,
Okay, please do. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's just like, I don't understand why you submit the plans and they know that other people had a problem in the area if we had been informed.
So the question I have, and I did allude it for our city minister, what other people had problems or had a problem with, and these we were not aware of it?
I was told by Bill Cole that at least a couple other people had issues and that's what he told me.
Okay, and under those circumstances, the city wasn't liable for the adjustment that they made when they built their homes.
But in this case, the city, by the time this house was built, the city already knew there was an issue, so all they had to do was tell us. Simple as that. We go to bring the plans in, you trust the city, you think you're doing everything right, and then you run into this one simple sentence. That's all that was needed.
Thank you, Ms. Zimmerman. If you just hang on a couple more minutes here. Looking for council action, on the agenda is the request for reimbursement for the sewer placement in the amount that's in your packet.
Can I ask a question?
Okay, so then go ahead, Councilor Freeland.
So, Bill, since you were involved in this, and do you feel that it was incumbent upon you, upon review of the plans, to indicate to them that we have a sewer system accommodating 8-foot basements? This is a 9-foot basement. They're going to have to do something different than would normally be done. Is that something that should have been said? And was that said to the previous owners that had to put in lift stations? That's the claim, is that the city was negligent in informing them accordingly and appropriately for what they would need to do to get this accomplished, which resulted in a $21,000 additional cost. And there's some legitimacy to their concern, but I don't know the depth to which plans are reviewed where you would say, oh, they're building a 9-foot basement. I better tell them that it's only built for an 8-foot connection. That I don't know that that's common standard procedure on your part when you're reviewing plans. Can you account for that, if you might?
You could build a 12-foot deep basement, whatever you want, but you do adjust it to the grade of the sewer and water coming in. It just makes your basement stick out of the ground a little farther. In this case, the last thing that was looked for was the sewer. Footing foundation was in, the house was pretty much up when, well, we got to go find the sewer.
And that would have been incumbent on Jacobson to have determined that there's going to be an additional depth necessary to get to that?
Normally you look for, what grade do I want to set my basement at? Where's my sewer? Where's my water? If you decide you want to go deeper than the sewer, great, but you're going to pump. In this case, it was the last thing they looked for.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Ms. Simperman?
Yeah, if you knew what they were digging through, it's like they were mining. So they weren't going to just like open up the whole front yard when they had be getting cement trucks in there and everything else, to do the sewer first, because you don't even exactly know, exactly how everything's going to be. So, I mean, they would have this big trench they would have dug initially that they would have had to work the whole thing around. And you normally don't get to the sewer hookup until you get the basement in, and then you get your pipe out to the sewer. And like I said, we even had trouble getting any information where the sewer was. Where the sewer stub even was. They had to get cameras and that. I mean, it was just, the whole thing was just a debacle. And if had we known that it was set up for an 8-foot basement, we could have changed our plans accordingly, but that's why we submit plans to the planning office.
Okay, Councilor Biondi, did you have a question? No? Okay, please,
I think I've been following this. So you submit plans to our planning office and they okayed them?
Right.
Okay. Then you have a contractor do the work?
Right.
So is there any communication with the contractor and the city, because we keep talking about this elevation of the basement? So would the contractor have any liability on this as far as the depth of it? I mean, when you're digging and you're not sure what you're digging through, but you have to hook up that water line, that sewer line. So wouldn't the contractor have some issue with this as far as the depth of a basement?
Well,
because from what I understand from Mr. Cole, you come in with a plan and it has a basement, but not the specific on it. But the contractor doing the work, shouldn't they have some?
Yeah, but the plans get approved by the city, and you don't even actually end up giving the full, you just put the $3,000 down, and then you don't actually get to essentially totally buy the thing until your plans are approved and they issue you the permit. So my biggest point is, had there been any communication, whether it was with me, my son, the contractor, that 8-foot basements are what it's designed for. But the fact that the city didn't bring that up, knowing that it was a 9-foot basement based on the plans submitted, the contractor doesn't know that there's going to be an issue.
Counselor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. And I don't know a lot about construction either, but I do have a question. Are there like sewer stubs? You know, like I've seen, like even at the old, when we were looking at the Midway School,
They just talked about the stub, finding the
there's
stub.
little stubs that stick actually up. Were there stubs sticking up on that parcel?
Not,
You would know?
not visible, but even at that, you don't really know until you actually excavate the whole sewer.
Were those stubs like capped under the ground then? Is that how that's normally done?
Yeah, and the stub can be right here, but below, the stub could go 5 feet, 8 feet, 9 feet, 10 feet, 12, could go anywhere they want. The stub is there. They knew where the stub was. They just didn't know how far down it was.
Okay, so typically its stub is not raised above ground, it's just wherever the line would come up.
Well, I believe sometimes it's on up ground, but most of the time it's where the line, it comes up, yeah.
I'm sorry to get technical, I've seen a couple of those things sticking out, and I understand.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't visible. I mean, they had to dig around to find it, but that still doesn't tell you
The depth.
the depth of it
depth of
until
where it
you
is.
dig that whole humongous trench in the yard, because it has to be big to get, because you can't use just like your little garden variety excavator. It's like, I think I have a picture of like what the rock looks like.
Sure.
I mean, he went through a few sets of teeth when he was with that huge excavator, you know, digging. So you have to have a big enough hole for that to get that excavator dug out. And so then your whole front yard is dug up, so you can't even really get in there to do the basement work and get all the cement trucks in and all that stuff. And like I said, my biggest issue is, tell us.
Okay. We've had a lot of discussion about this. If you have a little bit more information you'd like to add, Councilor Paulson, then we'll go to Councilor Johnson.
I was just gonna ask, is there any way that in lieu of reimbursement that we could do a tax abatement? No. Okay. This is kind of stumping me because there seems to be some miscommunication, and I don't understand the liability portion, if there actually is a liability portion. So for me, I think I'd have to get a little more information before I would say yes or no to reimbursement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Paulson. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm ready to make a motion, but I'm going to let you know that I think you probably need to pursue some other avenues. I don't think the council has the knowledge or the expertise to say, yes, we can write you a $21,000 check. I think you're going to have to take some other action steps yourself to move this forward. And with that, I will move to receive and file the request.
Okay, motion on the floor by Councilor Johnson to receive and file the request from Judy Simperman for reimbursement for the sewer replacement with respect to the property owned by her son Sean up in the Fairview addition. Is there support? Support by Councilor Freelieb. Is there any further discussion? Now, we're receiving and file the letter, giving you the opportunity to pursue additional avenues if necessary, legal or otherwise. We're not saying no, we're not saying yes. So it's just receiving and file it for additional information. Hopefully we'll get some more information from staff and understand this a bit more. I can give you some examples about the two homes we built, but it's moot to your point here. So it's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. So as a receive and file motion, can this be revisited then in the future?
It can
as
be.
A receive and file?
Yes, it can be, yes. Thank you, Councilor Paulson. Councilor Freelieb.
And I guess some of the questions I'll be looking to have answered are, for example, when a plan is submitted to the Planning and Zoning Department and they review those plans, I guess I need to know the depth of detail and specificity that they go through to determine what information needs then to be conveyed to the person that's going to be developing that lot. It seems to me that that would be pretty specific to review it to the point, oh, they're building a 9-foot, we better tell them it's only going to be to the 8-foot depth. I don't know that that typically is the kind of conveyance of information that's brought forward. Maybe it needs to be for further communication, and in this case, that caused an issue, costing $21,000. But I would think in the past, there's got to be a checklist of some sort that Bill goes through and to approve that plan. But just from my own lack of complete knowledge of what we're even talking about, it seems like that's pretty significant specificity for him to then say, oh, it's a 9-foot basement, I better tell him. I don't know that they normally would do that. But, and if that was an oversight on our part, then yeah, we need to revisit this and maybe reimbursement is due. But right now, I don't know that I have all the answers.
But like I said, my point is that he knew there was some issues up there. He told me that after the fact, so.
So, after the fact, he told you that? Okay,
So why didn't he tell me before the fact?
okay, thank you.
You know, because it might be a specific thing, but it's kind of an important thing. And he knew there were issues, because he told me when we started discussing that this whole road dig-up thing would have to happen.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor to receive and file. Gives you other options moving forward to try to seek additional avenues for reimbursement or for remediation. At the same time, we'll get some additional information from our staff with respect to that. The motion was to receive and file. We can bring that back up again as we get some additional information. Obviously, we discussed this at length there, and it's still, have an issue. So by receiving and files gives us to bring it back up and for you to find some other remedy if necessary moving forward. So it has been moved and supported to receive and file. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Simperman.
Item number 5 is Chuck Pettinelli regarding property at 1321 9th Street South.
Good morning, Mr. Pettinelli, and is the property at 1321 9th Street South, could you clarify and specify exactly where that is for the council?
The old Ben service station.
Okay, thank you.
Across from Canari's property.
Okay, what can we do for you, Mr. Pettinelli?
I don't know if you have any information in your packets on this at all. Probably not.
So what can we do for you today, Mr. Pettinelli? What is the specifics with respect to your request?
I received this letter quite a long time ago, but didn't come here to talk to you about it because you had a lot on your plate. And I want to thank you for all the work you did on your budget and everything else. So what I'm asking you is not much compared to what you guys went through, and I appreciate your due diligence. This letter is stating that my property is considered vacant. I'm here to find out who makes that decision and why.
Okay, Mr. Pettinelli, have you had any, before coming to us today, have you had any conversation with our planning department, a code official, enforcement, or anything like that? None whatsoever. So you're coming here for the first time without any other information from staff?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Jenny, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is the first that this is being brought to my attention today. There is definition within, thank you, within the vacant property building registration ordinance that defines what a vacant property is. And we do base that on some internal assessment, working with the Virginia Public Utilities, see if there's any utilities to the building. Some of it is site assessment. This one in particular, since I haven't been able to review it until just now, I can't give specifics, but generally speaking.
I can tell you the building is paid for by me. All taxes are up to date. There are utilities, full utilities to the building, including garbage, and they're paid full to date. I use that property for my own personal use. Because it had a business in it before, I have to run a lawful business in there. I can't use it for my own personal use.
Mayor. So what happens if we have numerous people that we had sent a vacant building registration letter, and normally if you would call staff and tell them it's not vacant, we would take you off the list.
So I think maybe.
I did that once before. I got this before, and I did that once before and told them it wasn't vacant. So how could it change from me being the building owner throughout all this to being vacant now?
I think it's interpretation of the ordinance, so I'm going to refer to Jenny. Jenny?
Thank you, Mayor. And we can't catch everything, and we do have to go by the best information that we have on hand provided to us. Sometimes errors are made in notices that are sent out. They may have been sent inaccurately. We don't know that until, like the city administrator said, you come in and let us know that perhaps, and we've had other ones where people have come in and said, no, X, Y, and Z, it doesn't fall under this, and we've been able to remove them from that list. I will also say there has been some changeover in staffing over the years on this specific project, so there may have been some error there as well. Now that we know, we can work with you on, if in fact removing you from that list is a possibility. So
reading your letter doesn't tell you that you can come in and say that this isn't, it tells you how to register this piece of property.
At the bottom, it does say if you have any questions, please, who to contact on here. So.
Sure. Okay, so are we going to list this as not vacant?
We can work with you after the meeting. I can either walk you over right now or, after the meeting, we can have a conversation about that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the city won't take any, the council, it's not at the council level for action at this point in time. It's for our staff to make that determination, for you to work out with our staff, the specifics about that building and how it's being used. And then the recommendation that comes staff would come from us if there's a concern. But I think at the staff level, they'll be able to make that determination and come to a conclusion without being brought back to the council here for a decision when we don't have the information that's necessary from our staff.
I will say that the day I got this notice, had I got a blight notice, I would have taken care of it, which I was in the process of taking care of. I was not in town for a good portion of the beginning of the summer, and my fault, I didn't make arrangements to have that place taken care of. And the grass and weeds were not good. So maybe that's what brought this on, but it should have been a blight notice. We all got to follow blight. And I would hope that the city wouldn't hold anybody in this town to a higher standard than they hold themselves. And if you know what I mean by that, I just want to let you know that, things aren't always what they seem. We have a hotel up there at the beginning of coming into the city of Virginia that looks worse than any piece of property we have. And I know there's no one in here, in this room, that wants to do that to the city. But because of unfortunate things that happen, money, grants, whatever, it's there. So I want you all to know that everybody in this city is going through the same thing that you're going through right now. So the same consideration should be brought for everybody in this city as you expect for yourselves.
Well, Mr. Pinelli, we do treat everybody in a fair and equitable manner. We don't single out any individual or business. The notice for blight goes...
I'm not saying you're not holding
The notice for blight goes to blight. The notice for vacant building goes to vacant building. And so at the bottom of each letter that we send out, there's a number for anybody to call to help to get that remediated. So to hold us to a higher standard, we have challenges just as everybody else does. The motel example that you gave just briefly is that we're seeking opportunities to demolish that. Now, that's going to be a couple $100,000 in which to do so. So we're going to...
And we as citizens go through those same problems. So when you put these rules on us and don't consider the same problems that you go through, you're holding us. I'm not holding you. You're holding us at a higher standard than you hold yourselves.
Not true. We're trying to remediate all the blight in this community, and so we're making an effort to do so. So if you just contact Jenny, she'll get that.
I plan to do that.
She'll get that taken care of for you, Mr. Pettinelli. Thank you.
Oh, here's some pieces of the city of Virginia's property that you might want to look at. I've also paid garbage there from the 10 years. And we have a huge garbage problem in this town. For 10 years. I would wager to say 8 of those 10 years, I never had a garbage can. And I'm still paying the garbage because I want the ability to use that property tomorrow if I choose and turn everything on.
Certainly. Just check with Jenny. She'll make the arrangements. We'll figure it out what your needs are.
But please don't hold, and thanks for your time, but please don't hold us as citizens to any higher expectation than you hold yourselves as a city. Thank you.
Okay, next, please.
In order to get all the appearances done before the HRA comes up, I'll go to item number 7, which is discuss the Mesabi Humane Society contract.
Please come forward. Please state your name for the record, and welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting.
Thank you.
We have received, go ahead, please, go ahead. Your name,
Mary,
please.
Mary Stokel.
And
I'm Linda Scott,
Linda
Board
Scott,
Chair.
thank you for coming. We have received no less than 20 emails with respect to this contract. Now, we table this in order to discuss this further. We completely understand what you're asking for. We have budgeted money for the Humane Society contract, and we're going to take a professional approach to this. So we've taken and read each and every one of those emails. Apparently, there's been a group of you who have putting forth this concern that we have about your shelter and about funding your shelter. We simply asked for one question, and that was, did you get any information from the county with respect to that? Irrespective of whether you come to an agreement or not from the county, we have a city of Virginia have a responsibility to fund this, and it's a matter of how we're going to do that. So that being said, welcome.
Thank you.
I can speak to the county because I spoke with the county this morning. We are still in negotiation with the county. And like I said the last time I think I was here, any help we can get would be great because they're ignoring us basically. Our past contract with them was, I think Councilman Johnson wanted to know what they paid us, was $225 per dog and $175 per cat. Okay, and that was it, bottom line. We're negotiating a contract with them right now because that's not enough money. I'm sorry. It doesn't even cover to spay and neuter an animal. There are some concern, and we're not concerned with the city. We've worked with the city of Virginia for over 30 years.
46.
Well, we've been around for 46 years.
And I think our only question is, the fact is, did you have to come agree with the county? If you don't have an agreement with the county, you don't know how much money you get, you don't know that. But the other portion of it is that when during the course of our conversation about this contract, and that's why it was tabled, so we get some additional information, some more statistical data, because you as an organization has agreed to provide us periodic updates about but we haven't got them. We haven't got them. We asked for it last year, the year before, we haven't got them. So we're hoping that the way you administer the Humane Society will get those reports moving forward, which helps us make a decision and helps you justify the need for us to fund the Humane Society with the budget that we currently have. So please continue with your request with respect to this Humane Society budget.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you. Dealing with the reports. The report that you guys received in October, is that a sufficient report for you? That had all of the information on it, what the cities gave us, or what we collected from each city animal-wise, what happened to those animals? My question to you is that sufficient for you?
Well, I think a couple of years ago, and even last year, we asked for a periodic report from you, not a monthly report, a quarterly report about where you're at. How many dogs, how many cats, how many were spayed and neutered, how many shots were given, all those, any expense that you incurred to justify us funding your budget at that level. So we asked for the quarterly reports. We did get the quarterly reports. Once every 9 months isn't enough. We asked for the quarterly reports. All we're asking for is for you to provide that for us so we can track, just like we track every other part of our budgets, our finance budget, our park and rec budget. We see those on a monthly basis, those finance reports. We're simply asking you to provide us one from a quarterly report.
You would like the quarterly report on the animals and a copy of our quarterly financials? Is that my understanding?
Okay, so I stand corrected by our city clerk. I know there was a motion to ask for it quarterly, but actually in your contract it says monthly,
It does say that, correct.
and we don't get it monthly.
We have definitely dropped the ball in that department, and we are aware of that. Going forward, there will be reports every single month. And if there are ever any questions as far as financials, we're an open book.
Well, our financials come through the council at this level, through our staff. By submitting the reports to our staff, they in turn provide that information, the financials to us on every department, including the Mesabi Humane Society. Councillor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. And I was not here for the last meeting when this was tabled. But after reading what's in our packet, I have no problem whatsoever. And on the emails that we just received this morning, there apparently is a rumor that the city wasn't going to fund.
If I may say something to that, a letter was sent, or the contract was sent to Linda, and it's been approved, we need your signature. Then we hear, we're not so sure the council wants to go forward with our contract. So we are responding to that. You know, once something, you sent it to us, and the contract is final, sign it, well then you changed your mind. So we're obviously concerned about that.
Well, the issue for us is the fact that there was a request for an increase, and we wanted to keep the contract the way the current. And the additional language that was in that contract for approval was, and it's still redlined in this contract that we have here, was requested by Councillor Paulson, and that the Mesabi Humane Society will provide monthly reports to the municipality regarding the number of intakes, AOC pickups, drop-offs, provide statistics on the number of cats, dogs at each municipality, and monthly financial statements. That's part of the new contract.
Correct.
And that's the one that I took to the board.
And with no increase in
Correct.
contract, with the
Correct.
regular, with the way same as it was last year.
Exactly.
Okay, thank
And
you.
it was approved by our board.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. So that leads us to where the receiving of all the emails, the last meeting that I left, I was comfortable with the way that the red lines were on the contract. So
I think rumors are a bad thing.
Pardon me?
I said I think rumors are a bad thing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you for
absolutely.
stating that. So my only request was that the monthly reporting be done and that we bring it back down to last year's number, which was 41.5. That satisfies me, so I'm ready to make a motion to accept the contract for service between the Humane Society and the City of Virginia.
And is that your motion?
That is, Mayor.
Thank you. Motion by Councillor Paulson to approve the contract with the same number as the previous year, with that addition for the monthly financial reports and other statistical data to be provided to the city. Is there support?
I will happily support that. Thank you, Mayor.
Support by Councillor Motley. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Where did you hear that the council was not going to be renewing the contract?
I was told, I wasn't told that the council was not going to renew the contract. I was told that that there were questions that were not being answered.
Okay, thank you. Pam, I'll give you a copy of this. This is from the Mesabi Humane Society web Facebook post 14 hours ago. Attention animal lovers, please reach out to the Virginia City Council members and mayor regarding the contract with the Mesabi Humane Society. The city is considering not renewing the contract with Mesabi MHS. They need to know how important the shelter and animal control is to the community and taxpayers. It is concerning to think of what would happen if they abandoned animals without these services. Please share this message. Email the mayor or city councilors, please send to mayorcouncil@virginiamen.us. That was never the intention of this council, including myself, to not renew. None of us in this room devalue what the Humane Society does. I have stated it, Councilor Freely, everybody on this council understands the value. We just cut hundreds of thousands of dollars out of a budget. And it is about the taxpayers holding you all accountable with the $40,000 we're giving you. And as has been said in here, that has not happened. We're not getting the reports we need. All of my animals have come from shelters, all of them. So I do value what you're doing. I understand the importance of it. I need to make sure that the taxpayer dollars that have been thrown around in this room for the last 4 months are being spent with accountability. I've read your papers, I've read the stuff, but they're not telling us where the money's going. They're not saying that it costs, we had 6 animals picked up in Virginia, and of those 6, we had to keep 3 and 4 of them went back to Gilbert where they came from. That's the kind of information I'm looking for. As I've said before, what happens is people bring their animals into Virginia and dump them because you are here, because they know that they will be picked up and they will be brought somewhere safe. So for us to say, well, a majority of the animals come from Virginia, so Virginia should pay the most, that's non sequitur for me. That's not logical. I'm guessing that if you were in Gilbert or in Mountain Iron or in Eveleth, a majority of the animals would be dumped there because that's where you are. So what I'm looking for is the accountability, as Councillor Paulson has requested, saying what we're spending the money on, what the $40,000 is, and what that is. The other part of that is the county and keeping them accountable. You're a county service. You've demonstrated that time and time again. If someone drops an animal off, let's say they drop it off right outside of Gilbert and it decides to come this way, now it's a Virginia problem. If someone dumps an animal in Mountain Iron and they figure out how to cross the railroad tracks and come into Virginia, now it's a Virginia problem. So that's what I'm looking for, and I'm very frustrated that it was put out on your official Facebook page that we weren't considering renewing. That's not what was happening. We are looking to be accountable for $40-some thousand every year, which we have not had since the 7 years I've been on the council. So I want to clarify that, and I would ask that you kind of clarify that too, because that's not what we were. We got 20 emails this morning. I just counted them. And they all say the same thing, the councilors don't understand, they don't know the value, and that's not true. So,
I appreciate your comments.
And the only reason I've been voting no is because I want the accountability. I want to be able to see where the money goes. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. So it has been moved and supported to approve the Mesabi Humane contract at the previous budgeted amount with that additional red line information requested by Councilor Paulson and the rest of the council with respect to the monthly reports. So it has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion?
Quick.
Councilor Motley, and then we'll go to you, Councilor Motley.
I just want to thank you guys for what you're doing. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Motley.
I want to thank all of you. We really do, and we do want to work with you. Councilman Johnson, what I would like to know, and what I'm trying to get figured out here is, when an animal comes into us, we ask where it came from. We have to take the word of the people that bring it to us. I get that we are the Humane Society. So is there some call? I'm sure there is. I'm not saying there's not, okay? But we do our best to make sure where these animals come from. We get the name of a city, a road. We're required by the county to give them the name of the road the animal came off of, okay? We'll do our best we can on that part. I can't guarantee anything to you. What I can guarantee you is you will get the reports, but I would like to know who you want the reports to go to specifically.
Well, they go directly to our city clerk.
City clerk.
I
Okay.
mean,
To Pam.
and Pam distributes them all. So we're not asking you to split hairs here. What we're asking for is that when you take a dog in, where did it come from? You don't know where it come from, you put it on the report, unknown, dropped off at the shelter, unknown. But what did it cost to house that dog? So you got, say instead of 10 dogs, this is what it costs us. You got to lay it all out there so you could give us financial report on a monthly basis, and that's all we're asking for. That's all we're asking for. Councilor Johnson.
And I think the other thing, and I don't know if you track this or not, and if you do, just when that dog leaves, where's it going? Because
As far as who adopts it?
who's it? Where's it go? Is it going out to Brit? And then do you track if that dog comes back again? Like those are the kinds of things that I'm curious about because, and animals are property. Unfortunately, trust me, my dogs probably are treated better than some people. But like. And I'm saying this is because I see there's opportunities for funding for grants for you if you can demonstrate where the service area. If you're adopting something and it's going to Orr and then it comes back here, what's going on? Why is that happening? How do we help you find more funding, more grants, more fundraisers? You focus on the Quad City, but if we see them all over the place, now you can go to somewhere out in Brit and go, hey, we had 3 dogs come from Brit last week. Can you help us fund our center? So that's the kind of stuff I'm looking for. It has nothing to do with me personally, but how do we help the Mesabi Humane Society continue to be a vital part of this community and grow and do what needs to be done so that the animals aren't continuing to be cycled through? Because I'm sure that costs a lot of money when you have the same animal come in 4 times. They have to have all the same tests every time they come in and that kind of stuff.
With all due respect, if I may answer that, we really don't track where the animals go. This isn't going to sound right, but I don't mean it this way, but it doesn't matter where they go. And as far as dogs coming back, few and far between do we get animals back that we've adopted out. My concern is where they come from. And unfortunately, because the shelter is in Virginia, that's just the way it is. And I know what you're saying, that you're going to be, you're paying for probably animals everywhere. But at our facility, it is a safe place to leave the animals rather than out on the highway or in the woods. I mean, I've got a million stories for you. So the fact that we have a safe place in Virginia for them to drop them off is paramount. And there's really nothing we can do about that. I think the city is very fortunate to have this shelter. We've been here for 47 years, and I don't think we've let the city down other than in reports. We've been a very good friend to the city. We've worked very hard, very hard. This last year was, I don't even have a word for last year and how busy it was with sick animals and just, it's nonstop, really. But going forward, you will get your reports, and we will continue to serve the community as we have in the past.
And all we're asking is to ensure, to justify the financial commitment we're making. That's it. That's all we're asking you to do by providing the reports moving forward. So we have been moved and supported to approve this contract as negotiated. Is there any further discussion? Okay, hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
We
very
appreciate
much.
it.
Thank you for patiently waiting.
Thank you, Dana, and staff from HRA for patiently waiting. We'll go over the 2024 budget and the rental rates for Washington Manor.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
Could you, what's going on? Councilor Beyondich, excuse me, Councilor Beyondich.
Thank you. No, thank you for your patience. You were number 2 on our agenda, and we have gone down to other items of concern without having you come up and taking your time. I know you schedule your time allotment for your workday as well, so I'm just a little frustrated that we've bounced around and you've been sitting here patiently the whole time, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
No problem.
And
Thank you.
and we did give you a heads up in the beginning, and so, again, once again, I echo what Councilor Biagi says, thank you very much, but, you know, you don't anticipate these long, lengthy discussions with respect to that, but that's what happened, so I apologize for that. Thank you. Dana and staff from the HRA, welcome, thank you.
Morning, Mayor, Council. So we're going to start with Jesse as we normally do. He'll go over the budgeted income statements for 8 months ending in November, so you can have an idea where Washington Manor is at then. And then he'll also review with you a proposed budget, and then I'll come back up and we can talk a little bit more about rental rates and capital needs and all the things that we usually talk about every year.
Thank you.
Morning. So the first item I'm going to go over is the Washington Manor budgeted income statement for 8 months ended November 30th, 2023. So November 30th is 67% of the way through the fiscal year. So total operating revenues are coming in at $515,064, about 69% of what was budgeted. Total operating expenses are coming in at $235,142, about 58% of what was budgeted. One thing to note is that there's no winter month utility expenses in there yet, so that's why the utility expenses are so low right now. Extraordinary items, which is our capital projects line item, is at $40,640, about 81% of the budget. And our net income is $239,281 compared to $292,627, which what was budgeted. So right now the Washington Manor is exceeding the what was budgeted for fiscal year 3/31/24. Right, so the next item I'm going to go over is the Washington Manor proposed operating budget for fiscal year end 3/31/25. It's the colorful sheet. The first column is our current budget for fiscal year end 3/31/24. Last April, they had a 2.5% increase in rents. Next column over is a proposed budget for fiscal year end 3/31/25 with a no increase in rent. Next column to the right is a no increase in rent plus moving the guest suite into a unit. The next column over is a 1% increase, and then it goes to a 1.5% increase, a 2.5, and a 3% increase. So if you look at the vacancy loss line item, for a no increase, we're sitting at $50,035. And if you compare it to the no guest suite column, if we turn the guest suite into a unit, it lowers the vacancy loss to $39,595, which is about $10,400 difference. If you go to the other income line item, which is where the guest suite income gets posted to, we're at $5,200. And then if we turn the guest suite into a unit, we're at $3,050. So a difference of about $2,100. A net gain of about $8,300 if we turn the guest suite into a unit. So total operating revenues range from $758,563 for a no rent increase to $779,313 for a 3%. You go down to admin expenses. Salaries and benefits increased about $6,600. That's because our new property manager is on family health insurance, and our old property manager was on single. You go down to membership dues and fees, increased from $300 to $1,950, and that's for the new annual city fee they charge the landlords. Total admin expenses are projected at $68,790. Total utility expenses are projected at $92,400, up about $3,000. Go down to maintenance. Maintenance employee expenses increased by about $3,000 due to COLA raises. You look at the heating and cooling contracts down to miscellaneous contracts, the total of those, of all the contracts last year was $24,450. They're coming a little over budget this year, so I projected them at about $28,825, about $4,000. Cable TV, so we get our TV from MediaCom, and over the last 4 years, they've increased about 11% each year. So I projected another 11% increase in cable. Total maintenance costs are coming in around $239,050. Go down to general expenses. Insurance is the main increase here. It increased about $1,000. That's because our workers' comp rate increased quite a bit last fiscal year. Capital improvements, we kept at $50,000. Net operating income ranges from $275,957 for a no increase to $296,398 for a 3% increase. And if you subtract the debt service of $280,530, you get a net loss of $45,73 for a no increase, $35,93 if we turn the guest suite into a unit and have no increase, $22.44 for 1%, $56.48 for 1.5, $9,056 for 2%, $12,460 for a 2.5, and $15,868 for a 3% increase. And below the net income, you'll see the rent ranges for each option. Any questions on that?
One question. Cable is paid by the individual tenant, correct?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you. The second column, you have the no guest suite. Are the other 5 columns with guest suite or without guest suite?
With a guest suite.
Okay, so if we eliminate the guest suite, then would each of them increase by the $3,500 approximately?
Well, it's a net increase of about $8,300, so yeah, they would increase by about $8,300.
Plus whatever increase you might do on rent would affect that a little bit more.
Yeah.
So, and those are my question was about the cable. We authorized you a couple years back just to automatically increase as MediaCom increased, so that's still happening, correct?
Right.
Okay, perfect. What kind of revenue does that guest suite generate, if any?
The last 12 months, it generated about $2,100.
Okay, and the utilization, I'm guessing, is very limited?
Yeah. That would average, I mean, we were just calculating that, it'd be about 29 nights a year. So just a little history on the guest suite, maybe.
Please.
I'm trying to think how long ago that was the council had approved. This is when we maybe had a little bit more vacancy at Washington Manor. And we have a guest suite over at Laurentian Manor. However, it is not a full apartment. It was built that way at the beginning, 30 years ago. But there was some vacancy at Washington Manor. There was some tenant requests for a guest suite to have like Laurentian did. And so, we brought that up one year that there was these requests. We thought if you wanted to, you might as well. You'll generate a little bit more income. The tenants will like it. It's kind of a little bit of a draw. And they do like it. Don't get me wrong, because, they can have their family stay there in the same building. But financially, we were just looking at it this year and we were saying we need to at least bring it to the council and show you it's not utilized probably enough that it makes financial sense. Whether you want to keep that as an option for your tenants there, that's great. Either way for us, it doesn't matter. But financial sense, it just doesn't really make sense to do that.
And that's exactly what I was looking for. I mean, if it's a significant, we're renting a month out of 12 for the convenience of a couple people. Do you know Is it utilized by a lot of tenants, or is there one or two that just know it exists and they keep using it? Do you have a sense of that? Okay. I'm just curious to know, if we're going to have one upset or two upset tenants, or if the whole building is going to be grumpy if we eliminate that.
I don't know that everybody will love it.
Okay.
How you combine that with a rent increase might make that more or less loved by tenants.
I appreciate that, because right now I'm leaning towards eliminating the guest apartment as opposed to a guest suite, and using it to generate revenue, because we know there's more coming financially when it comes to the capital outlay of that building, and any revenue we can generate would probably be beneficial. So thank you for the comprehensive report. It took me a while to find it because we did jump around, but I got it and I appreciate it. Thank you.
So we have a couple more questions here. First of all, for me, with the rental market the way it is now, what's the average rental in properties similar to the one we manage at Washington Manor? What's the average rental fees of other entities of same or similar?
I can give you some ranges for a couple other properties. We always give you range for Laurentian Manor. So we are doing a 3% increase. The HRA just approved a 3% increase there, effective April 1. Our range there is $865 to $1,137. So one bedroom. We have the same kind of setup. One bedroom, 1+ den, which is like a 2-bedroom, and then a 2-bedroom. And then another comparison we usually bring to is Lincoln Place over in Eveleth. They're also doing a 3% increase. Their 1-bedroom's $1,019. Their 1 and den is $1,119, and their 2-bedroom is $1,219. I'm going to just bring one other thing to your attention too. Right now, a 2024 FMR for St. Louis County is a 1-bedroom at $868 and a 2-bedroom at $1,113. And our payment standards that we set at the HRA for Section 8, a 1-bedroom is $860 and a 2-bedroom is $1,056.
Thank you, Dana. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. If we could just quickly go to your budgeted income statement, and it says eight months ended. It ends November, and it ended November 30th. But your fiscal cycle is April through March. Is that for tax purposes?
That's just a fiscal cycle of our agency overall.
So that's always been your fiscal cycle?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
And so could you give me like your best projection? Are you going to hit the targeted numbers come March 31st?
We anticipate that, yes.
So that you won't be underwater at all with the current budget. And then moving forward with your recommendation, do you have a specific recommendation that you're bringing forward today for us to consider?
For rent increases?
Correct.
Maybe I want to tell you just a couple other things first, so you have that idea. Just so you know, a few of the other improvements that were made this fiscal year over at Washington Manor, the garage heater replacement, which was close to $24,000. We had some things right at the end of last fiscal year as well. We were able to pay those, of course, still all out of the budget. We had some steam system improvements too, just some smaller things, but to trying to protect the system, like, installing a side stream filter. We have a chemical treatment program now in there, things like that. So not a ton. And then our regular capital improvements, like on turnovers, we have to do a lot of like carpet replacement and flooring replacement because of the age. Appliance replacement, they're pretty common now because of the age of all of them there. Capital needs, I think that you probably remember me saying multiple times last year that you are definitely at end of life on a lot of your HVAC over there. Your AC systems we're just kind of trying to keep them going right now. You have, I already talked about flooring, but brickwork roofs, the roofs are they are end of life. Okay, so, and then windows and most likely a heating conversion in the upcoming years. Besides that, I will also say, well, just so you know a little bit about the bond and reserves as well, after your 2/1/24 payment of $265,000, your bond balance will be $540,000. So that's some good news. We're getting down on that. We've also been working on, I know A few years ago, you had asked us to work with the city on the possibility of taking over Washington Manor. And at that time, we really came to the conclusion with the city that we couldn't, because of that bond balance, it was just too high to generate enough capital to fix that building and operate it for us. We are now, of course, looking at that again because of that balance coming down. So we have taken some initiative and some steps, both working with our financial advisor at Baker Tilly and then also with New History to see if we can come up with some other sources of revenue that we can maybe try to put together a whole project. So, obviously we have a gap right now that we're looking at, and so we're gonna be working on that over the next few months as well. So the reason I think it's important before I make a recommendation is just because I do think it's always good to know you do still have all of those capital needs at that building. They are only getting worse. And I think that combined with what you would see in the rental market right now, you should increase rent by at least 3%.
Okay, thank you, Dina. Councillor Paulson?
Thank you. And you know what? You guys run such a tight ship. I really appreciate. I mean, every year you come forward and it's balanced. I really, really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Going forward, Dina, do you think that as the HRA would consider, because the bond balance is decreasing, do you think that those capital improvements that you would be able to acquire? The HRA has levy capability, is that correct?
We do have levy capability. Our levy is quite small. It's about $70,000, and so the portion of that levy already is approved by the city council is on a debt payment between a couple other market rate projects that we have. But we are looking at all of those possibilities of whether or not that could also. That's one thing I've already brought to Baker Tilly. If we do something like we did on other market rate projects, can we maybe put a portion of our levy onto the debt service to increase that capital?
That's kind of what
Is
I
that
was
where you're
thinking.
going?
Yep. So
Yeah.
you're already thinking long-term in that respect?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so I think that's just, so there is opportunity to have conversation with the HRA and the city moving forward with, excuse me, with possibly working together for the HRA to take over the building.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, I'm going to say that with a grain of salt as well. Obviously, too, just like the city would maybe not love to be in the housing business and like that liability to not be on you, we also need to know, and our board needs to know and be able to evaluate that if we were to take over the Washington Manor, that we can do it in a way that we can raise enough capital to fix all of those items and operate that successfully for the next 20 or 30 years. And we also as an entity can't take on that liability without knowing that. So that's really where we're at right now and why we're trying to go through some of this process and bring in some other experts and consultants to help us with that sources and uses, especially considering the age of the Washington Manor building and, possible historic aspects of it as well.
Thank you, Councillor Paulson. So we look forward to that partnership moving forward and those discussions to get to the end result of the city relinquishing ownership and responsibility of Washington Manor. That's for staff and financials to work out. We look forward to that conversations moving forward. Your recommendation with respect to the rental rates for the Washington Manor is, what is your recommendation?
3%.
3% is the recommendation made by the HRA, so thank you. Any questions, comments, or concerns or motions by the council? Councillor Johnson.
I would make a motion to direct the HRA to eliminate the guest suite and utilize it as a rentable apartment.
Okay, motion on the floor by Councillor Johnson for the HRA at Washington Manor to eliminate the guest suite and open that up for additional apartment rental. Is there support? Support. By Councillor Motley. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. Now, with that 3% recommendation recommended increase, was that recommended to keep the guest suite at that because you are increasing? So in order to give some concession back to the renters, was that part of the recommendation or no?
I look at it purely from a financial viewpoint, you don't have a ton in reserves. And we are making it on the budget, don't get me wrong, but you don't have a ton in reserves. You still have a pretty tight budget. I would eliminate the guest suite and still do a 3% increase. And that's also, you know, considering the fact that the rents actually aren't that high. Now, I'm being recorded, and I'm sure that all of the tenants up at Washington Manor are going to see that and see that I just said that the rents are not that high. And it's not that I'm not trying to also take into consideration that many of them are on limited incomes. But it's also trying to balance the fact that you have to operate this building, and the rents aren't necessarily keeping up with the market. So you have a need, the rents aren't keeping up. We have tried to keep them as low as we possibly can over the last 10 years, but maybe that's catching up a little right now too. So it's hard for me sometimes to stand up and say to it, you know, we should raise the rent 3%, take out the caretaker and get your revenues up a little bit more, especially when we're talking about a senior living in one of our buildings. But when you do compare the rents to other average rents, and even when you compare it to the Section 8 standards, they're not that high.
So the recommendation, really quick, though, is to do both. Okay, then I would support that. My next question, though, that I did have is, so those that have a limited income capability or abilities, does that take into consideration that they would still be able to stay there? Do you work with those clients, or how does that work if it does go above the threshold of their affordability?
Their rent is their rent. So, I mean, we don't vary on rents at you know, like Washington or Laurentian. The rent roll is the rent roll. Now, obviously, we have people internally that say it's just not affordable for that person anymore, and maybe they need to live in public housing or another subsidized option. We would help them try to figure that out.
So you work with them on that case by case?
Yeah, and we have, like, I can think of an instance even in the last few years where that did happen once, where we had somebody move from Washington over to the Columbia-Richelieu.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion on the floor to eliminate the suite. That's motion number one. It's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion in that regard? Here, Councilor Freely.
I just want to mention the fact that when my parents were alive, there was a guest suite where they lived, and it was very, very convenient for us to be able to utilize that. We did pay a nominal fee for that, and you charge a nominal fee as well, I'm assuming?
We do charge $75 for the first 2 nights, and then $55 for the third and beyond. I had to confirm there. $75 for the first 2 nights, and then if they're staying longer, it's $55 after that.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to know that. Thank you.
I mean, we've always tried to keep it like also a little under maybe the local hotel rate. Not to say that you couldn't increase that as well. You sure could.
Just has there been any assessment conversation-wise with people who have utilized that, or? Okay, we're just going to forego it.
I can definitely go back and discuss it with them if you want. I think I know what the answer is pretty much going to be, but.
We'll be able to rent that out at a full cost, though.
Yes, I believe so.
All right, thank you.
I mean, we have a waiting list, so we will be able to rent it out. I mean, I would fully think we would be able to.
It has been moved and supported to recommend the elimination of the guest suite and use it as a regular apartment rental, monthly rental. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And then next,
I would make a motion to go ahead with the 3% increase if that's something we need to do as well.
we do.
All right, thank you.
Councilor Freely makes a motion to increase the rent as recommended by HRA administration and staff for a 3% increase across the board for rental at the Washington Manor, moved by Councilor Freely, supported by?
Support.
Councilor Motley. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. That's it?
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Mayor,
Yes, Councilor Freely.
just out of courtesy, would it be able to acknowledge the guest that's been sitting patiently in the audience for the entire meeting at this point? Just,
I'm sorry?
there's a guest that's been waiting to be acknowledged in the,
Well, it's for.
Or is it not timely to do
It'll be
so?
for the closed meeting.
oh, closed meeting. Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
thank you. And two, we apologize for the length of this meeting. thank you for your patience moving forward. We'll be moving to that momentarily. Thank you, Councilor Friedli. Okay, but so can we take 5 minutes? Do we need to take 5 minutes? Anybody have to? You do? You do? You do? Okay, 5 minutes, thank you. And then we'll move to number 6 on the agenda, financials, and then to the closed meeting. Let's just take 5 minutes. We'll see you back at 11 o'clock. Thank you. Yes, good morning. Sorry to get back to you, but yes, well, let me just clarify. My office is open. I was there this morning, but we have a committee of the whole meeting. This is a working session that started at 8 o'clock this morning, and we're still in it. We took a really quick break. I probably won't be out until noon, maybe 1 o'clock in the afternoon, so I apologize for the inconvenience, but what can I do to help you? Oh, well, I appreciate that very much. Okay, and where are you having a problem at? Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, Rock's Jewelers is also having some problems in other businesses downtown as well. So, no, it's not just you. There are a number of businesses. And we have no authority. I'll give you right now. I have no authority. There's nothing I can do to help you.
I wasn't either.
Well, that's true. Well, maybe, yeah. Mhm. Sure. Hey, Britt,
Thank you.
next item.
The next item is item number 6, the monthly finance reports.
Okay. Council? Council Beyondich?
Thank you. And I want to thank Britt and Sherry. This morning, I was in another meeting before the council meeting where I led off into our financial packet. For those of you who don't know, I'm up at 3 or 4 in the morning, and I ear tagged a lot of my pages. I did get to go through them with them, which is very helpful. So to sit down and actually look at everything that I earmarked was very helpful. Upon further discussion, looking at these financials, I understand, and Sherry, you just tried to explain it to me on how to look back and why some of these numbers that we have in front of us today are not quite...
They're not complete.
Complete, thank you. So if you could explain that.
Sure, because we still have not closed out the year 2023 yet. We still have revenue coming in, and expenses are pretty much there, but there are some expenses that still have to be allocated back to 2023 along with revenue that we anticipate coming in, and realize there's some revenue that we get from an ambulance and the public utilities that's 3 months out. So we're probably looking at a more clear picture in March for how we ended the year in 2023. Now, as far as the actual departments in each one, you can see this monthly finances, like the city administration was 99% on budget. The city attorney's budget is ended more at 95%. There might be some legal expenses coming still in, so we know that's not totally finished. And I just want to make a clarification too that April 1st is when they're going to start our audit for 2023, and that'll take a couple weeks. So, we can go through this animal control, a little over 100%. Some of the City Hall, 62%. And I did take a look at, earlier in our meeting, we took a look at the ambulance. It's ending pretty decent, not as in the deficit as we had budgeted. So hopefully that after we get done getting the expenses into December again and the revenues in, hopefully it broke even, or at least with little. The other one is the golf course, which ended in a deficit of about $7,000. But I do know that he will be sending in inventory and getting a refund check from the vendors for that. So that will have to be allocated revenue back into 2023. But for the most part, he ended a lot less than what we budgeted in the deficit. The fire hall did come under budget. Is there any other questions? I mean, pretty much you can see by the percentage line where, how each department ended.
Counselor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. So Sherry, if we could go to page 30, and it's under City Hall building, account would be 403, repairs and maintenance other. In the current budget year of 2023, we had budgeted $100,000. It looks like we did not expend that $100,000. So what happens to that? Does it get absorbed by the general fund to be like split out between other departments in the general fund that are, what's the word?
Sherry?
In the negative?
Sherry?
So what happens is, like, I think I mentioned this back when we were doing budget planning meetings, that when a department is over budget or in a deficit, negative, the city pays that bill, still pays the bill. We're on the hook to pay it. So guess what? If another department is under budget, then that just goes to help the city's checkbook. Make it in layman's terms.
So that 100,000 goes back into the general fund?
It just doesn't get spent. I don't have little pots of money in the vault.
Sure.
What happens is it just doesn't get spent. So there's more in the checkbook.
In the checkbook to pay for departments that are
did go
operating
over.
in a deficit.
Right.
Okay. And then on page, so it looks like we have the golf course in here twice, once on page 35 and once on page 49. But they're the same exact numbers, so it just looks like they're in there, it's in there twice.
Let me make sure that isn't the restaurant. Oh, let me see.
Page 35 under golf course, and then 49.
Okay.
Looks like the same.
Same report?
Same report, yeah.
Apologies for that.
So on the utilities Sherry account 381, we under budgeted or overspent, either way, whatever you want to say, by $35,890. How can we do a better job on that budget projection? Or did we change that in 2024? I'm not really sure if we did that or not.
We may have changed that in 2024. I realized there's a percentage that we split because of the restaurant and the and the golf course being together, and maybe that was a little lopsided. Maybe the restaurant used more utilities than what we were getting. So I will
think
check
that's-
into that.
Yep, that's what I'd like to point out as we now move forward with renegotiation on that.
Correct.
Because I think the allocation that we had given for utilities projected at the actual restaurant was $36,000. So that's why I thought it was really but interesting that it's at 35.8, and maybe that's the deficit number. I'm not sure. That gets
possible.
rolled over into the restaurant portion, but I just wanted to confirm, let's maybe make sure we know where we're at monthly with those utility bills as we go forward negotiating the a restaurant contract in the future. And I think that's all that I had, other than, again, that miscellaneous, those three accounts that I kind of kept pointing out. We seem to be over in some departments, and then some are way under. So I'm glad we reevaluated that for 2024. But it's nice in retrospect to have that in front of us. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
I want to thank you and the council for actually getting so involved, if that's the word for it. I know there's some other terms that they've gotten to have a negative connotation to them, but I do appreciate the fact that you have not just 2 sets or 4 sets of eyes, but we have more eyes looking at this and questioning, because as you can see, there's a lot of line items there and a lot of departments.
And Mayor, I do have one more that I circled.
Sure,
I
Councilor
just
Paulson.
missed it. On page 65, under the Iron Trail Motors Event Center, we have account 104. Under overtime pay, we had budgeted in 2023 $12,000. We were over budget by $55,707, which is a percent difference of 564%, at 0.23%. And I'm wondering if we have a better handle on that in 2024's budget, and as we get these monthly reports that now are, I thank you, I thank staff, and I thank you all for these reports. And I don't know if we're moving on to that or if that's part of our financial discussion today, but if that is a line item or just part of our monthly financial reports now. The one thing, I love the fact that Finley has the reporting capabilities that it has. And on this large sheet on page 81, when we talk, you've got your quantity sold, your gross sales. I'm wondering if there is an additional column. I know Finley doesn't have the capability of doing the accounting portion yet, but I'm wondering if there's an additional column that can be added within the Excel spreadsheet that would give you your quantity sold, your cost, like add a cost column in there. And then once you add the costs in there, like of each pizza or each Snicker bar or hot apple cider, whatever it is that you're selling, those might only need to be adjusted once every 6 months, depending upon if the vendor stays consistent with their cost. But that might give you a better picture for your actual profit and loss, because the way that I'm figuring this out is that you have a set, so your utilities are almost at a fixed cost at the Iron Trail Motors Event Center, and then if you have a schedule with your staff, that should also be more of an estimated fixed cost. So you have those two. Those two items are basically your fixed costs going forward, and any revenue that you can bring in will offset or reduce your fixed costs, but you kind of, so to speak, know the amount that you have. Like if you have $43,000 a month in utilities, and I don't know how much it is for, we're just given hours here, so I'm not sure how much, can that be ascertained from those reports, how actual the dollar amount monthly for employees on a regular schedule, not including anybody that would have to be called in, like for plowing or for any special events. But that might help us get a really better overall picture what our monthly costs are versus how much we have to produce in sales and revenue, as well as adding that cost piece to an Excel spreadsheet. But going forward, is Brian here? Oh, yeah. These are wonderful. This is a wonderful example of what the kind of reporting or expectation that I had going forward. But I still think that we kind of need to know what are those monthly fixed costs based on your utilities, and then basically on your employee's schedule. It would be based on their schedule, then whatever that is per month. Then if you could break out your costs of goods just on the concession stand side, I think that's going to help us get a much clearer picture but I really appreciate staff time doing all this, and I'm really grateful that Finley has this capability. And Brian, when I did talk to the gentleman from Finley, he had stated that hopefully by this summer, they will have that accounting piece going forward, coming into that software. So that hopefully will make it a lot easier and a lot less staff time going forward. That's all I wanted to point out today, and I thank you for giving us the time to discuss our financial monthly reports.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Paulson. Any other questions regarding the financial status before we move on to the next item on the agenda, Councillor Beyondich?
Thank you. And so, Sherry, if I understand when we spoke earlier today, each month as we're looking at these, March is going to be the month that will tie up 2023. You'll have all the information, and so
Usually the first quarter.
the first quarter. And then we will be able to see month by month
Right.
from there on. And the audit will be taking place hopefully
April 1st.
April 1st. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beyondich. Any other questions, concerns, comments about the financials? We're moving forward with some more statistical data with respect to this. So these financial reports are very helpful as we tweak it moving forward for every department in the city, not just the Clarence Trail Memorial Event Center. So thank you, everybody, for all your hard work and your concerns, staff for doing so, and the council for their diligence in scrutinizing and asking questions about to clarity for the general public as well. So any other comments, questions, or concerns with respect to the financials as presented today? Seeing none, next item, please.
The final item that's listed on the agenda is contract negotiations for real estate, as we have a proposed contract for use of the Iron Trail Motors Event Center to discuss.
Okay, before we move to, we'll request we go into closed session with respect to this. Thank you. So before we do that, any other items of concern quickly before we move on to this moving forward? I don't want to belabor this meeting any longer than we have to, but if there's any specific information that needs to be disseminated at the committee of the whole meeting that cannot be disseminated to staff, please come forward at this time. Our Park and Rec Director, Brian Silber. Brian, good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Before we go into closed session, I just wanted to take a minute to introduce David Boytz, who is the General Manager of the Minnesota Wilderness. And if the council would be willing to let him have a brief moment to introduce himself to the council.
Certainly, thank you. I've had the opportunity to meet Dave on a number of occasions, so once again, it's nice to see you again. Welcome, Mr. Boytz.
Thank you very much. The last occasion when you sold me a bag of popcorn.
We did.
Yeah.
and so thank you for your patience here.
Yeah, no problem. Just wanted to say thank you for having, letting us have a game at your wonderful facility earlier this fall, and also listening here today to somewhat of a proposal, I guess, as to what we're hoping to be able to accomplish and talk with you about. But just great to be here, and really, really impressed with the facility and the operations and what you have going on over there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boytz. Appreciate that very much. Okay, anything else? Looking for a motion to go into closed session with respect to item number 8 on the agenda.
I have a question, Mayor.
Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. Is the other party remaining in our session with us for discussion?
Well, I would think we're going to be discussing this. He can be in here, is that correct?
He can be here if he's the party that's
He's
proposing it,
party
yes.
for
But
the
anybody else would need to leave.
Right, he's
That
party
would
of the
be
proposal.
a part
yeah.
of what, I just want to clarify before we go into close that the party that is bringing this into our packet will be sitting at the table with us.
Yes,
Okay.
and I misunderstood your question
Sorry.
as to which party you were referring to, Counselor.
I didn't know which party I was referring to either, but thank you for that clarification.
A motion to go into closed session
So moved.
by Councilor Beyondich, supported by Councilor Motley. Any further discussion? Hearing, seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed. Motion carries. I would ask everyone who's no party to this close negotiations, please vacate the city council, and thank you for coming. Appreciate it very much.